Start recording.
This meeting is being recorded.
Yikes. It's March 14th that I won't be able to be here. I'll be traveling.
Okay. All righty.
Where are you going? Where are you off to?
Dallas. I'm being interviewed the next day on a big podcast show for what is it? Dallas Success. No, North Dallas Success. And they're going to interview me on a podcast. So I need to be there live in a studio.
All right. I'm just going to make a note. So I'm curious now. What can you see on your screen? Can you see the Kindle thing? The book?
Yeah.
It freaks me out because I've actually got my calendar up, so I can't see Kindle. And you can't see my calendar. It's like, it just freaks me out.
Oh boy. Jane, you are the guest of honor today.
Yes.
Would you like to start?
Yes, the escape from darkness. The escape from darkness involves two stages. First, the recognition that darkness cannot hide. This step usually entails fear. Second, the recognition that there is nothing you want to hide, even if you could. This step brings escape from fear. When you have become willing to hide nothing, you will not only be willing to enter into communion, but will also understand peace and joy. Gorgeous.
I love that.
Yeah, don't you?
Yeah. I have a question. I always like to ask questions about this. Does anyone on the call tonight have any area of their life that they feel like they're hiding?
Let's see. Let me think.
I kind of did a quick inventory on me, trying to figure out if there's something that I hide.
You know, it's funny, but I think I actually hide a lot for myself, and it doesn't come to light until I actually talk to people like you, Gary, and things, and we're doing things like this, and it's like, that little door gets opened, and it does get light shine on it, and I'm not even aware of it until something finds the key, or someone finds the key in conversation.
I think the only place I'm hiding, because I'm pretty transparent with my life, but I think it's more due to fear of the external persecution. And I've been thinking a lot about persecution lately, and like what that is, because I've realized that there's a part of me that has, I won't say always, because always is a long time, but at least in this lifetime, felt persecuted. And I never really understood that or realized that. But I realized when I was a little boy, my brother persecuted the heck out of me when I was a baby even. And then, coming out and being gay, like I find that I will hide that. I won't be as public with that as I probably ought to be, just because I don't want to deal with the ignorance, and I don't want to combat the ignorance or rationalize myself to anyone. And I think I hide some there, especially in a professional environment. Like I noticed when I wrote my book, I didn't mention one thing about being gay. And I thought, it's a huge part of the trauma of my life, but I didn't mention anything about it. And I'm thinking, should I, because I'm not complete with the book yet, or should I just let it lie? So I think I'm hiding there. Not because I have any shame around it, because I don't want to deal with the blowback.
Right. And is it anyone's business?
No,
is what you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's really not.
I mean, what if you know, what if I like to, you know, eat a dozen pickles a day? And and I do it every day of my life. It's like, and it defines me, but it's like, would people understand that? No. Um, and I just feel like any expression that we have that is us, that does define us, it's like, that's, you should not be accepting or unaccepting of me based on that.
No, it's very true. And it is also, part of I think the culture, but I'm gonna have to think about that some, because I never really realized that there was a part of me that was hiding until you read that paragraph. And I kept thinking, and I do think it's important that when we come across something like this within the course, that we do a little bit of reflection than just continue to read, because we have to have a self-application to this information.
Right.
And really look at it, because it says, this, where is it? Yeah, this step usually entails fear. Second, the recognition there's nothing you want to hide, even if you could. This step brings escape from fear. When you have become willing to hide nothing, you will not only be willing to enter into communion, but will also understand peace and joy. And I think that all has to do with judgment, self-judgment. And when we let go of that, the miracle is created by having a judgeless experience of others, but then having a judgeless experience of ourselves is something I think super important to create.
Well, I have
Well,
a question for everyone. Can I pose it?
Please.
Okay. Are any of you familiar with the book, The Body Keeps Score?
I am.
Okay. So I read it about a year and a half ago and 2 years ago. And I know that my body is the first thing to break down, and I have certain sensitivities to things. But I feel like my body tells me when I'm uncomfortable, and also when I'm hiding things from myself. My discomfort, my ill at ease. And I think if you have enough being ill at ease, then you have disease, right? And
Yep.
so I guess here's my question is, isn't every malfunction of the body due to some kind of hiding out?
That, and it has to do also with a prolonged emotional state that I think personally, that we don't even know that we're feeling.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
Right.
it is about hiding out, but oftentimes it's outside of our awareness.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been experiencing is I'm getting better physically with some ailments because I'm opening myself up to myself. It's like, wow.
No, it's true. It's true.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's what I felt too.
Okay, cool. V, you want to add anything to that or subtract anything?
Well, that it kind of articulates what I was meaning. Like I don't know often what it is I'm hiding from myself until there's a process of discovery through conversation, or as you say, Jane, there's an illness that comes up all the time. Like I've had a skin condition for most of my life, which has only just cleared up in the past year or so. It's taken that long for me to sort out. what it was. And, you know, one person who was helping me through the emotional thing of it was like, oh, it's anger. But it's like, well, I don't feel angry. But it was anger with myself that I just wasn't even aware of, because it was just a constant state of the way I spoke to myself.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it was love.
yeah.
There was no love there. And it takes a while it just took a lot of uncovering to recognize that and change that.
Welcome,
Yeah.
Linda. Are you
Hi,
there?
Linda.
Hi, Linda.
You're muted.
Yes,
There we
I'm
go.
here. Hi guys, sorry I'm late. I've just come through the WA border and just parked up in Eucla. So I'm in the same time zone as you, V. Yay!
Hey! Still got the Nullarbor to go then.
No, I've been over the Nullarbor.
Oh. So
Awesome.
You've moved WA then.
You did that pretty quickly.
Yeah, I did. I had trouble with the van last night again. So I'm just not stopping for sightseeing or anything like that. I'm just making my way.
Well, good for you.
Yeah. How are you guys going? Everybody good?
We're all good.
Excellent.
So
Great.
I'm going to read the second one, B. Holiness can never be really hidden in darkness, but you can deceive yourself about it. This deception makes you fearful because you realize in your heart it is a deception, and you exert enormous efforts to establish its reality. The miracle sets reality where it belongs. Reality belongs only to spirit, and the miracle acknowledges only truth. It thus dispels illusions about yourself and puts you in communion with yourself and God. The miracle joins in the atonement by placing the mind in the service of the Holy Spirit. This establishes the proper function of the mind, and it corrects its errors, which are merely lacks of love. Your mind can be possessed by illusions, but spirit is eternally free. If a mind perceives without love, it perceives an empty shell and is unaware of the spirit within. But the atonement restores spirit to its proper place. The mind that serves spirit is invulnerable.
I think
Beautiful.
we're going to take the rest of the call to unpack that.
Yeah.
Let's go back again.
Okay. Holiness can never really be hidden in darkness, but you can deceive yourself about it. And we've all kind of agreed that that's true. We've all done that. This deception makes you fearful because you realize in your heart it is a deception and yet exert enormous efforts to establish its reality. So I love that line. I can only see it, just a glimmer of it in my own experience. But what I see is that I know when I can't figure something out, I can't get to the bottom of it, then I have fear that I'm lost. Like I can't see it, I can't recognize it. I'm working right now with you don't know Miliana, do you, Veronica?
I do, yes.
Okay, so Miliana and I decided to do a trade because I called her up. She's gotten very accomplished in her work over in Europe. And so I called her up. I said, I need to do some work around this whole thing of my family of origin, which I did a lot of work previously, but I don't think I dove as deep as I need to go. And I had fear around it. Like, I can't get to this because I don't know, I can't get to it myself. And I wasn't comfortable asking anybody else to facilitate it. And then I was coaching Miliana, and she said this session that she did with a client, I thought, I need that exact thing done with me. So let's do a trade. So we've done a trade and it really, I got some real clarity, but I know that there's fear if I can't realize what it is. And you exert enormous efforts to establish its reality. And I think that comes from me, I'm just using my own experience here, from me talking about it to people, or saying that I can't get to it, or I can't locate it on my own. All that stuff is really putting out effort to establish that it's hidden and it can't be found. But that's not even true. So I think that's what it's saying. Does anyone else on the call have an experience of that, where something's out of consciousness, you know it's there, but because the manifestation of it's there, but you can't get to it, so you talk about not being able to get to it and you get frustrated and you have more fear than you normally would? Or is that just my unique experience?
Absolutely. And I know that there's something I need to work on when that happens. And the tricky thing is, removing that deception is the trick, but it's not that easy. And that's a deception as well, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, V, remember that process that I taught years ago, years and years ago, on the inner sanctuary of healing? Do you remember that?
Yes.
Well, Millie's just worked that puppy to death, and which is great. She does it for all of her clients. And I thought, I need to work symbolically on these issues, right? And so we worked on my childhood trauma, and there was an image in the inner sanctuary, an image of myself as an infant, and an image of myself as a 3-year-old boy who made these big decisions about identity and all of that. And, we did this whole thing where, the infant, well, it was surprising because when we started to work, the 3-year-old boy just picked up the infant in a protective way and just held the infant, which it was so beautiful to me. And and then we did the inner healer and the soul, and those two grew to be a fully potential person. But it was it's felt different ever since that very simple process of working with the symbology of those two wounded parts of me and experiencing them evolving to their full potential. And since then, at a level I can't describe with words, I have felt different. So I'm like, I think that process really works. Like, really works. Okay. The miracle sets reality where it belongs. That's seeing the oneness of all things. Reality belongs only to spirit, and the miracle acknowledges only truth. It thus dispels illusion about yourself and puts you in communion with yourself and God. Now, as I break that down, it's more like it's really interesting because we can see others as the light of God, but do we see ourselves as the light of God? And that's a really curious question, because I'm not so sure I always do. I'm attempting to see the light of God in others, but am I seeing the light of God in myself? And how focused am I on that? Because the mind does like to externalize everything. And if you come from that center, I think that is more the point of what these last few sentences actually said. The miracle joins in the atonement by placing the mind in the service of the Holy Spirit. Want to advance it, B?
Yes. I've got a question for you on this one, because so the mind externalizes everything, but I was reading something about, and you've mentioned this as well, the subconscious mind. Whatever you say about anybody else, the subconscious mind takes it personally. And this was actually saying that the subconscious mind doesn't see anything else. It doesn't see anybody else. It just sees you. Therefore, everything you say about anybody else, you're actually saying about yourself. Anything you're feeling about anybody else, you're feeling about yourself. So,
Whoa.
yeah.
Well, isn't that because it dwells within, and you can only recognize what dwells within.
Yeah. Yeah.
You couldn't recognize it.
Right. Like you can't see it you can't see it unless you're doing it
Yeah.
at some level.
Yeah. So if we can
Right.
recognize a light in other people, why is it so hard to recognize a light in ourselves?
Because the mind naturally projects attack outside of itself, never reflectively inside. And so everything is projected out. And this is why people have such difficulty taking ownership.
Mm.
I know for myself, Robert and I used to get in these arguments. And I had this realization, they were repeating, compounding arguments. And I got this experience of, oh my God, I'm doing the same thing. The same thing I'm accusing him of doing, I'm doing. And he would say that to me. You know, he said, what you're telling me is exactly what you do. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. But it was true. I was doing that in spades. And I just thought, oh my God, it's true. We can't see anything outside of ourselves but ourselves. And I'd be like all irritated and annoyed and sometimes really upset. And I'm thinking, what am I really pissed off about? And because Robert's never ill-intended. He's never, you know, he can be a little manipulative, but never in a cruel kind of way. Unless he's trying to buy a car and I won't agree to it. He gets really manipulative. That's currently going on.
So when we talk about the war within, that kind of feels like the mind externalizing, whereas the subconscious mind is taking everything personally. So it's almost like trying to marry them up so that we can, when we see the light in others, it's also a reflection of light in ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an overall acceptance of the external, means an overall acceptance of ourselves as well.
Hmm. Okay. So this establishes
a proper function of the mind and corrects its errors, which are merely lacks of love. In the course, eventually it's going to say all actions are either love or it's a call for love. So it's saying here that the proper function of the mind is to correct its errors, which means seeing separation. And they're really just a lack of love, love for self, love for others. Your mind can be possessed by illusions, but spirit is eternally free. If a mind perceives without love, it perceives an empty shell and is unaware of the spirit within. But the atonement restores spirit to its proper place. The mind that serves spirit is invulnerable.
And what did we say about atonement?
Atonement is where you have a direct experience of oneness with God. Miracles, the sequence of miracles leads to the atonement. So when we are actually creating those miracles where we're seeing the light of God in ourselves and in others, that gives us a sense of oneness. But then there are those times where there's no one else there and we have a direct experience of God.
Okay, thank you. I remember a couple of months ago, we talked about atonement and how I remembered what it wasn't. I remembered that it's not about, well, you recognize yourself as a sinner and sins, and you ask for forgiveness and so on and so on. And it was like, no. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I actually made a note, which I refer to every time atonement comes up now. Atonement equals reconciliation or remembering who we are.
Oh, I like that. Remembering who we are.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this one thing. The mind that serves spirit is invulnerable. I think I need to write that down.
Talking about which,
So being invulnerable doesn't mean that you're lacking in the ability to see vulnerability. It's not an inability to well, what am I trying to say here? Is vulnerable. So it's saying that the mind that serves spirit is not vulnerable, but these days being vulnerable is kind of where it's at because it's being human. But being invulnerable, I understand this, is to rise above our humanness.
It
Yes?
is. It's to be in or within a non-separated mind in our perspective. So our egos and our identities they don't really matter. You know, we're not attempting to in America now there's this new term woke. You know, I have no idea what that actually means, but
Right.
I mean, the government's trying to pass laws, anti-woke laws, like you can't honor racial diversity, you can't honor. They're trying to rewrite Black history, so no white people have to feel bad that we enslaved millions of people and destroyed cultures and brought them here. No one's allowed to speak about that in universities or in schools. So what they're trying to do is rewrite the tragedy of an entire race here in America, much like if Australia came along and said, our government forbids you to talk about the abuse of the Aboriginal people. You cannot talk about it. Cannot teach about it. That's what they're trying to do here. It is stunning. Stunning.
It's truly insanity.
Yeah, well, I'm going off on a tangent here, but I think this is where it really is about just not seeing the separation at all. Now, this, in my opinion, is really hard because I just went down a rabbit hole of judgment because the stuff that's happening here in America really pisses me off to no end. And I know it's an illusion at the highest level of being able to see the truth. I know it is. I know it's a pendulum that swings all kinds of ways, and it ultimately doesn't matter. And it's not my battle, and it's not my fight. And I remember the master would always say to us, be like a lotus. You flower above the water, but your roots are in the mud. So your mind needs to be like that flower in the sun, but you're living in the roots and the mud of the world. And he would say, and Dr. David Hawkins, the guy who wrote Power versus Force and umpteen other books, I was in a workshop with him, which was so beautiful. And someone asked, why is there so much suffering in the world? And he said, well, where would souls go that had to learn about starvation, that had to learn about war, that had to learn about natural disasters? Where would those souls go to learn about those things that would humble them to turn their face to God? Where would they go? He said, this world, and I totally believe this to be true, is the place that is a university for, as we know, millions and millions and millions of souls. The master in India would say to us, he would say, this is going to sound a little harsh, but he would say, this is a place of suffering. This is not a place where peace will ever be. This is not what this place is, nor will it ever be. It never has been, it never will be. He said, this is where A stronger creature eats a weaker creature, who eats a weaker creature, who eats a weaker creature, and man eats them all. He said, where and how can there be peace when there's this much violence just to survive? And I'm like, okay, I totally get that. And he would say, this is not a place where peace will ever be. But this is a place where the souls that wake up in time can make the greatest level of spiritual progress, because the external is not seductive enough to make us see such beauty and love everywhere that we won't get lost in it. This place forces us to go inside and seek for answers. I'm like, that's true. And the master would say, when at the time of death for a disciple, and I think not every disciple, because I'm not a very good disciple, but he would say, when every disciple dies, the master appears and takes you in an elevator through the lower heavens, the lower astral and causal worlds, because he said, if you see those worlds, you would never leave them. You would be stuck in them because they are so beautiful that you will not ever leave those worlds. And I'm like, all right. And I know myself, I would definitely do that. I would get stuck in the first astral heaven. I'd be like, oh God, look at that man over there. I'm going to go meet him. I do stuff like that. So as I said, I'm not a great disciple, but the truth of it is that I think we're seeing just a smidgen of what's possible in our lives and what really is true. That there are worlds within worlds within worlds. I mean, Maharaji always used to say, there are many mansions in the Lord's house. And I think, what the heck does he mean by that? Is that there's many planes of existence. And we go to wherever we are resonating. So this is why because I personally think that heaven and hell exists right here on this planet. Because a lot of people are in hell and a few are in heaven. And it has nothing to do with a place. It has to do with what's happening between here. And people who are thought possessed, who continually hurt people or are in continuous fear, they're already in their own personal hell. I know people right now that are literally in a hell. And I know people that are in heaven. And it's all happening right before my eyes. So I do think that our mind is the creative force that will create either massive separation or the ecstasy of oneness and miracles. And how we directionalize it is completely up to us. The thoughts we think, I think for me, it's like the language that we speak directionalizes the mind. So as we speak, so we think. And the quickest way to change thinking is to change the words that represent our thoughts. When that begins to happen, we start transforming our language, we transform our life. So I think it all comes down to this one thing, for me anyways, is that the creation's perfect. The world is perfect as it is, although I have heaps of judgment on how I think it should be. It will never be the way I envision it or think it should be. It's going to be exactly the way it is. Like I read an article today that if Trump and Biden were in a race today, Trump would win the election. I'm like, what? What?
Yeah.
I can't even fathom that. And if when that happens, I'm going to force myself to be in deep surrender, like just deep surrender, because the country will change dramatically. It will no longer be America. It will be something else.
Move to Australia, Gary.
I know, I'm thinking about it. I'm going to get in a caravan and come down and find you, Lady Linda. As long as you go down south, if you go down south, way down south, that's where I want to escape to. But the problem is I have to learn how to speak in an Aussie accent, so none of the Aussies would turn me into immigration.
We'd protect you, Gary. Don't worry about that.
Oh God, I'm telling you. telling you, I love the southern tip of Western Australia and a little inland along the coast and stuff. I just have envisioned myself living there for years, like just also
Really?
Where I'm
little
heading.
hermit. Yeah, like a little
What's it-
hermit.
Tell me,
That's where I am.
just
That's where I
fill
am.
me in on it.
Hit it, V.
That's where
Give
you are,
download
V?
it.
Well, I fell in love with Nana when I was driving here for the equine course, and you're coming around. It's a great road, and it's all hilly, and it's just national forest everywhere. And then you come around little round a turn, and it's just a little magical little bunch of hills and dams and pastures and sheep and cattle, and it just has this feel about it, and it's kind of like the Hobbit town. It's what
It is.
feels like.
It's just like that. It's like
Yeah,
I've gotten to Middle Earth. Where's
Yeah.
Gandalf?
yeah, yeah. It's magical. It is quite magical, and there's a river running through it, and there's plenty of water. And I mean, at the moment it's quite brown because it's summer and we haven't had any rain for months, but it's still green in patches, because there's a lot of water around. So yeah, people are lovely. Best neighbours I've ever had. So I'm very happy here.
Awesome.
And there's a lot of places in the southwest. No, south in the south. Let me just say the south. That end with up,
Yes.
and that means water. So whenever you see like Boyanup Brook and Nanup and all those places, it's all to do with water.
Hmm.
Oh, it's beautiful. And the Aboriginal people are so, although they are present, the power of their ways, I don't think has been fully embraced by most Australians. Some have, for sure. But the language is there still, by the names of the towns and the streets. And it's almost like the Aboriginal people are still on the land. I feel their spirits a lot when I'm out out especially in the bush. And it's an incredible place. And down south is quite magical. I remember Robert and I were riding a bike down in Margaret River, and we were just out in the bush riding a bike down these, forgotten paths. And all of a sudden we come across this huge herd of big red kangaroos. I mean, when they stood up, I was like, holy shit. They were huge. They were like 6 foot something. And I'm like, I think we have to backpedal a little bit and get out of here.
Well, I've just come across the Nullarbor. So the Nullarbor actually finishes when you get to the border. So the rest of the road is the air highway, but it's not the Nullarbor.
Right.
But there's signs up everywhere, and it's got emus and wombats and kangaroos and camels. I didn't see one, not one. It's quite disappointing.
Well,
you'll see
come
them.
to Nana, stay at my place.
Yep.
Yesterday there were 2 emus just dawdling down the street.
Yeah, right.
It happens at least
Nice.
once a week. There's emus or kangaroos that just dawdle down the street because it's a golf course at one end and the river's at the other end, which is all bushland or forest. So so they're just kind of meandering down the street.
Yeah, I've been to Nanup before, but not for a long period of time. I'll be coming to see you, darling. So just
Cool.
hold on to that.
Yeah.
So Jane, it's a very different lifestyle and it's a very different culture. Although it seems the same, it's not at all. And especially the land has this antiquity to it. I remember I was up in the I forget, far north in Western Australia. What's that area called?
Kilburra?
It starts with a K.
Kimberley.
Kimberley. Yeah. So I was up in the Kimberley and I was hiking around and stuff. And I remember it was kind of by the coast and stuff. And I remember rounding this corner thinking, at any moment, I'm going to see a dinosaur around the bend. The land felt so ancient that it felt like time had stopped, and I would come across a dinosaur at any moment in time. It's that kind of magic there that is nowhere else in the world. It really is not anywhere else in the world.
All right, I have a question. Are there certain predators in the form of insects or rodents or snakes or that you have to be
there's all
careful?
that.
Well, the
Yeah.
other day, actually, here, the cats were howling as if there was another cat outside, only it was worse. And I went to have a look, and there was a snake crawling towards the house, and it went under the house. And the cats were carrying on for the next half hour or so, and it took them that long to settle down. So snakes have a smell about them, and they could smell this snake, and they knew when it had left. But this, and I put up on the community page, I was panicking, going, I need to find a snake relocator. People going, oh, that's a nice looking specimen. Oh yeah, it's just everyone was so casual about it, because unless you go out there and actually get aggressive with
Step
them,
on it.
they leave you alone. They're coming for the rats, the chickens. You know, chicken coops have rats around them, so they come in for the
Sure,
rats,
sure.
eat the rodents, and then they move on. If you've got
Do
no
you have a
rodents,
lot of do you have a lot of mosquitoes or ticks?
I haven't encountered a tick for years, and the mosquitoes are pretty easy to manage with just the right plants and not having too much water around. It's just stagnated.
Okay.
I think
Just curious.
in Mandurah, which is on the coastline, it's some ridiculous amount of mosquitoes per person. So it's like, I don't know, 183,000 mosquitoes per person in Mandurah. Like it really is disgustingly awful over there with mosquitoes.
Bear in mind, Jane, that Australia is the same size as the United States, so it's a huge difference in climate and land between the north and the south and the east and the west and everything in between. Yeah.
Right. Yep.
It's beautiful here. Here I am talking like I'm in Ireland.
Well, listen, I'm already transported.
Okay, V, do you want to read number 3?
Darkness is a lack of light, as sin is a lack of love. It has no unique properties of its own. It is an example of the scarcity belief, from which only error can proceed. Truth is always abundant. Those who perceive and acknowledge that they have everything have no needs of any kind. The purpose of the atonement is to restore everything to you, or rather to restore it to your awareness. You were given everything when you were created, just as everyone was. Everything.
Wow. Well, if that doesn't sound like how to create heaven, I don't know what does. It's interesting that it always comes back to the same idea that, you know, we are the light of God. As long as we acknowledge and associate ourselves as that, everything is restored to us. Like there is no fear. I've gotten glimpses of it, but never like a full day of living in that. How about the rest of you?
Glimpses, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, glimpses.
This is
But
really
lots of
this is really interesting from the perspective that, at least for me, it seems like it is radically simplifying everything down to one thing, which is, you know, creating a miracle outside of yourself. But what I'm getting from this now is really about how you have to create a miracle inside of you and acknowledge you as that spark of the divine. and walk around in that. Because if we were walking around in that, we would have no fear. Everything would be perfect. We would know that we would always be provided for. Always.
Mm-hmm.
That fear thing is interesting. And my friend in Adelaide and I were having a chat about that the other day. I can smell the fear in her. Smell it. She's got lots of stuff going on at the moment, and the fear is just, it's overwhelming. And we had a chat about it, and I said to her, I'm not actually aware of any fears that I have these days. I used to live with fear. I used to listen to everybody, what everybody said, and literally took what they said as the truth, which created a fear in myself. Whereas now I apart from my van breaking down, but even then I don't have a fear with that anymore, because it is what it is. It's things happen, and they happen for reasons. And another friend and I were talking on the phone last night, and I said to her, the universe will always provide. No matter what the situation, it always provides. So now I don't worry about it. I don't worry about where money's coming from. I don't worry about if the van breaks down. I don't worry if the van's going to cost me a huge amount of money. It already has. So I'm not fearful of it costing even more. It's just such an interesting, fear is such an interesting thing for such a little word. But everybody lives in fear. You see it on the news, the media portray it, the government portrays it. Everybody wants people to live in fear so that they can have that control. It's just not right.
Well, it does manipulate the masses, that's for sure.
It does. It's sad.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So since we have no control over that, we have control over us individually. We have to do our best to live outside of that.
And some people don't see it, though. I guess that's part of my point. Some people don't actually see that they are living in fear.
No, they don't, because it's become a norm. It's become what they view themselves as normal, and as a consequence, they won't see it.
It's an everyday lifestyle.
Yeah.
Don't you think too that there's like a knee-jerk reaction to fear? Like, to me, I see around me, and even in myself, in my own humanness, but a lot less, is the knee-jerk reaction of, oh, I have to go and get for me. I have to fit. And it's so, and that takes up residency and occupies the mind, and we become human doings instead of human beings. All true. Because of fear. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about fear. Well, I have a challenge for us all. My challenge is to practice creating a miracle with ourselves, to begin to start looking at ourselves more as that spark of the divine. And if you are a spark of the divine, literally, and you're resonating at that level, then you do become invulnerable. Like nothing is going to pierce that faith and that love that you show up in. So I'm going to do my best to do that this coming week, and see how I navigate. It's very interesting, because when you're working with clients, you have the solid opportunity to really look at them as the divine spark in the middle of their very large narrative. And if you can hold that space for them, it becomes even more powerful of a change that can happen. So I got a client in 15 minutes, so that's what I'm going to do.
Beautiful. Okay, I'm ready for that. Let's all report back next Tuesday.
Sounds good.
Or is
And
it,
Jane,
or
you
I'm
just-
sorry, or is it Wednesday? For
next Tuesday.
Lin-
This time next
Okay.
Wednesday.
Wednesday for us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But Jane, if you could just tell me what month that I go into Mars, that would be awesome.
you got it. Coming your way by tomorrow.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, gang,
Thank you.
let's give a word or a statement that we want to leave with the group. And V, since you're on top of the pictures, well, let's start with you.
I am the spark of the divine.
Ah, you stole mine.
I
Okay.
already did, yeah. You said it.
No, that's all good. That's all good. I am the spark of the divine, and every other person is additionally the spark of the divine, and we are one. Jane?
I am abundance.
Awesome. And optimal health too.
Absolutely.
Linda?
Well, I'm going to go back to an old saying, and that is feel the fear and do it anyway.
There you go.
Beautiful, Linda.
Turned out good in the end. Linda, you have an amazing time in WA. It's an amazing part of the
you.
country. And
Thank
lots
you.
of visitors to be had.
Yes, definitely. Lovely to see you guys. So glad that I could
Oh,
make it.
I'm
Yeah.
really glad you showed up, darling. And
Thank
we
you.
always carry you in our hearts, knowing that you're
Aw.
traveling around, being the spark of the divine wherever you go.
Oh,
Mm.
thank you, Gary. You just made my day.
Aw, wonderful.
Okay, gang, have a
thank you,
wonderful
everyone.
night, and we'll see you later. See you next week.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.